Hey guys, tonight we climb into a narrow canoe under a sky so clear it looks like someone spilled glitter across a black velvet sheet. The ocean is warm and infinite, and your paddle dips into it with the quiet rhythm of someone who knows exactly where they're going, even though there's no land in sight. The only thing around you is water, stars, and the low hush of wind. There's no GPS, no compass, not even a scrap of paper map tucked in your pocket. Just you, the canoe, and some cosmic clues above. Oh, and by the way, you probably won't survive this if you're not paying attention. Because one wrong turn out here, and you're basically fish food by sunrise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch low in the canoe. Salt spray stings your lips. The wind has a voice, and tonight it's whispering east. The stars above you, they're not just pretty, they're your navigational grid, your map, your calendar, your GPS, and your safety net all rolled into one. You're about to cross hundreds, maybe thousands, of miles of open ocean, guided only by your senses and the sky. Polynesian navigation isn't just impressive, it's mind-bending. And it starts with this trusting that the ocean isn't empty. It's full of signs, patterns, and messages. The only trick is learning how to read them. Your canoe is a vaka, a double-hulled marvel lashed together with coconut fiber rope. It's been carved by hand, taking months, maybe years, guided by chants and rituals. This isn't just transportation. It's a living thing. You whisper to it. You thank it. You beg it not to crack when the waves get rough. Above you, stars wheel across the sky. You've already memorized their positions and seasonal tracks. Your teacher, probably your uncle or grandfather, taught you to imagine a giant dome above the ocean. As stars rise and fall across the horizon, you use them like compass points. The star Sirius, that's your east marker tonight. But in 6 months, it'll be something else. Now, you're not just watching the stars. You're tracking their rising and setting points. You know where Arcturus will vanish. You know how far the Southern Cross leans in July. You've practiced this since childhood, lying on your back, pointing at the sky, naming stars like friends. The breeze shifts. You adjust the sail. You don't have a speedometer, but you know your canoe is moving at about 5 knots. You feel it in your bones. You judge speed by how the water hisses past the hull and by the pull on the lines. Polynesians knew how to estimate speed so well that they could predict landfall within hours. Even after weeks at sea, you squint at the horizon. Nothing yet. But you're not worried. You trust the stars, you trust your training, and deep down, you trust the stories, because that's the secret. Every voyage begins with a story. Chanting genealogies, myths of sky gods and ocean spirits. They're not just bedtime tales, they're memory maps. One chant might describe a journey from Tahiti to Hawaii, encoded in metaphor. Maybe it says, "The shark follows the moon to the mountain of fire." That's a poetic way of saying, sail north when the moon is high, and you'll find the volcanic islands. It's beautiful, and it works. The stars shift overhead. You adjust your heading slightly. This isn't random drifting, it's precision. In fact, when European explorers like Captain Cook first saw Polynesians sailing in the open ocean, they were stunned. Cook himself admitted that these navigators were better than most of his own men. And this was in the 1700s, with compasses and sextants on board. One mainstream historical fact: the Polynesians reached nearly every island in the Central and Southern Pacific, including places like Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, and Easter Island, centuries before Europeans even knew those islands existed. They did this without metal tools, compasses, or written language, just brain power and boats. And here's your quirky tidbit: some Polynesian navigators trained by staring directly into the sun. Yep, they practiced glancing at it to measure its position without blinking. It sounds like something your optometrist would scream at you for, but they swore by it. The sun's angle told them time, heading, and even latitude. You glance over the side of the canoe. The water glows faintly, phosphorescence. Tiny plankton lighting up as your hull slices through. It's one of those tiny magic details that reminds you you're not alone out here. The ocean is alive. It speaks in ripples and glints. Historians still argue whether these voyages were intentional or accidental. Did the Polynesians really set out with a plan to colonize the Pacific? Or did they just get blown off course and happen to land somewhere useful? The evidence leans toward the first idea, deliberate exploration, but the debate still simmers in academic lounges over lukewarm coffee. The wind picks up. You tighten the ropes. Your muscles ache, but you're focused. You remember a chant your uncle made you recite it 1,000 times. It lists star names, wind patterns, and swells. It ends with a phrase, "If the ocean gives when you listen." Now, you steer with your hips. Literally, you lean into turns, feeling the canoe's response. This isn't like driving a car. It's like dancing with a wooden beast who loves rhythm and hates hesitation. One jerk, and she'll tip. Smooth moves only. As the sky deepens, you notice a faint glow ahead. Not land. Not yet. Just the moon rising. But that light will help you read cloud patterns soon, and clouds are another clue. High, puffy cumulus clouds, they often form above islands. Flat-bottomed, like cotton candy on a plate. You file that away for later. You hum under your breath. Maybe it's a chant. Maybe it's just to keep you awake. The stars above don't sleep, and neither do you, not really. You nap in shifts. You dream in fragments. But mostly, you watch the sky. You're one night into a journey that might take weeks. And so far, you haven't seen a single sign of land. But that's okay. You're not lost. You're Polynesian. And you've got quiet confidence. You wake with a start. Not because of a loud noise, but because something subtle has changed. The canoe is still gliding forward, but the rhythm feels off. A different kind of wave is passing beneath the hull. You sit up, squinting into the dark. The stars above haven't moved much, but below, the ocean is giving you new information. This is where things get interesting, because tonight, you're not just sailing over on the ocean. You're reading it, feeling it, treating it like a giant, rolling manuscript written in invisible ink and salt water. Polynesian navigators, called Pice Wayfinders, didn't just look at the sea. They listened to it with their entire bodies. The wave pattern you're feeling, that's a swell. Swells are long, rolling waves generated by distant winds, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of miles away. They travel across the ocean in consistent directions, and if you know where those swells are coming from, you know which way you're going. It's like invisible arrows under your canoe, pointing the way. Right now, you're feeling a cross swell, a steady roll from the southeast, and a new, thinner one from the northwest. You adjust your heading slightly, aligning the canoe to ride between them like threading a needle. This technique is called sailing the swell valleys, and it takes years to master. One wrong angle, and you'll be fighting the waves instead of riding them. Your teacher once told you that the sea has moods. Calm and helpful one day, sneaky and cruel the next. But if you pay attention, the swells always tell you where they've been. And if you know where they've been, you know where they're going. That's the key. You shift your weight, letting the canoe ride smoother now. Your feet are bare, toes curled over the edge of the hull, and you feel every nuance in the movement beneath you. The ocean isn't just a surface, it's a three-dimensional map, alive, moving and ancient. Mainstream historical fact. Polynesian navigators routinely traveled thousands of miles of open ocean using no instruments, just the feel of the swells beneath their canoes. They could detect up to 5 different swell directions at once, even when the sky was cloudy and every star was hidden. That's the kind of skill modern sailors with GPS still can't replicate without instruments. You reach out and trail your fingers over the side. The water's texture has changed slightly, less chop, more pull. That means the currents are shifting. You know this part of the sea always pulls slightly west in the dry season. Another clue. Another breadcrumb in the vast blue forest. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators claimed they could feel underwater features, like seamounts or submerged reefs, through the way the water moved. They said the waves bounced differently when passing over underwater ridges. It sounds like a superpower, but some still swear by it. You yawn, stretch, and glance across the stars again, still on course. But the ocean is your main teacher tonight. You remember your first lesson in wave reading. You were maybe 10, maybe younger. Your uncle blindfolded you, set you in a canoe tied to a dock, and started rocking it gently. "Tell me where the waves are coming from," he whispered. You guessed wrong. He dunked you in the water. "No, try again," he said, smiling. Classic uncle move. After enough dunks, you started to get it. Not just the direction, but the shape. Some swells are round and slow, others are sharp and fast. Some slap the hull, others kiss it. You learn to listen with your skin. Historians still argue whether this kind of wave, reading is truly teachable, or something closer to intuition, like having a perfect ear for music. Some say it's a learned skill, others think true navigators are born with it. Maybe it's both. Maybe the ocean chooses who gets to know her secrets. Tonight, you feel chosen. You slide forward, checking the lashings on the canoe. Everything's holding. You glance at the horizon, still empty. But your gut says land is out there. Not just because of the stars, but because of the water. The swells are starting to reflect, bouncing back ever so slightly, as if they've hit something solid far ahead. You can't see the island yet, but the waves can. Another trick, you look for interference patterns. When swells from different directions cross each other, they create a pattern, like the crisscrossing ripples when you drop two pebbles in a pond. Polynesian navigators used these intersecting patterns to triangulate their position, judging how close they were to known islands. You shift your weight again. The canoe hums under your feet. There's a rhythm here, a low vibration in the hull. Some say you can hear an island before you see it, that the waves carry the echo of land like a distant drumbeat. You're starting to believe it. You close your eyes for a moment, just to rest them. You don't sleep, not really, just drift in and out while your body stays tuned to the ocean's music. In your half-dream, you remember a story your grandmother told you. Once, long ago, a navigator named Moke Ikeha sailed from Tahiti to Hawaii, guided only by the flight of a bird and the memory of a dream. He couldn't see the island, but he trusted the water. He felt its changing breath and followed it. When he arrived, the locals asked how he'd found them. He said, "The ocean wanted me here." You smile. That's a classic navigator answer, equal parts humility and quiet swagger. Suddenly, a shift. A sharper wave, a different echo. You sit upright. The canoe jerks slightly, as if it too feels something is near. You scan the horizon, but no land yet. Still, the swells are more complex now. Shorter, more echoes. It's like the ocean's whisper has turned into a conversation. You trust it. You lean into it. You're not guessing anymore. You're aligning. And that's the real magic of Polynesian navigation. It's not about forcing your way across the sea like some conqueror. It's about merging with it, listening, responding, letting the ocean carry you like a song carries a dancer. The canoe rocks gently beneath you, and you feel, deep in your bones, that you're getting closer. You don't need a map. You are the map now. You stretch your arms overhead just as a cold breeze brushes the back of your neck. The night is still deep, the stars still bright, but your mind has already shifted to the next layer of navigation. Swells may guide your feet, but tonight, your true compass blazes above your head, scattered across the sky like ancient graffiti. You tip your head back. There they are, your old friends. Constellations, star lines, celestial clues so precise that if you could freeze time, you'd see the Earth rotating beneath a perfectly choreographed dance. These stars aren't just for wishing on. They're your map, clock, compass, and calendar all at once. You don't just look at stars, you know them. You've memorized their names, their paths, the exact degree at which they rise and set across the horizon. You learned it the way a musician memorizes scales or a chef remembers spices. And like muscle memory, the knowledge flows through you without effort. Your uncle once said, "If you can name 200 stars, you'll never be lost." At first, you thought he was kidding. But now, you understand. You've practiced under countless skies. You've watched Orion's belt glide through seasons, seen the Southern Cross rotate like a slow compass needle, and tracked Sirius as it blinks above the ocean, always the first to rise, always on time. Tonight, you're using your star compass. Not a physical object, but something etched in your memory. Imagine a circle around your canoe, divided into 32 points. Each point aligns with the rising or setting of a star or constellation. As the canoe moves, and the stars rise and fall, you adjust your heading accordingly, like turning a dial on a cosmic stereo. Mainstream historical fact. The Polynesian star compass is a real method of navigation used across the Pacific. The most famous modern practitioner, Mau Piailug of Micronesia, taught it to the crew of the Haka Likar in the 1970s, reviving an almost lost tradition. He could name hundreds of stars and determine direction even with cloud cover, using only the wind and wave patterns. You glance toward the eastern horizon. There it is, Altair, rising just where it should be. You smile. That's your cue to shift course slightly north. You don't need a pencil or a chart. You don't even need to speak. The stars tell you everything. But this isn't just about memorization. It's about rhythm. You remember lying on your back as a child, watching the stars move hour by hour. You'd whisper their names under your breath, like a spell Hikinalia, Oklika, Kolia. Some were named for gods, others for ancestors. Each one a point on the journey, a note in the song of the sea. The sky rotates slowly. You track it with your eyes, anticipating the next star to rise. You know that if Sirius sets just as Vega rises, you're still on course. If not, you adjust. It's that simple, and that complex. You hum a chant. It's one your grandmother taught you. It names the stars in order of appearance from east to west, matching them to directions and seasons. It's more than a mnemonic. It's a living map. And it's beautiful. You don't just sail by the stars. You sail with them. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian navigators believed certain stars had personalities. One might be considered a trickster, rising earlier than expected to test a sailor. Another was a protector, only appearing on safe nights. Whether symbolic or superstitious, these stories helped encode navigation knowledge in a way that stuck. Who forgets a star that's trying to prank you? You glance south. The Southern Cross is tilted just right. That means it's about 2 a.m., and you're moving in a solid northeast direction. You double, check against the waves beneath your feet. Yup, still aligned with the main swell. Stars and sea are in agreement. That's a rare and satisfying thing. Historians still argue whether early Polynesians developed their star compasses independently, or picked up hints from other oceanic cultures. There's some evidence of cross-pollination with Micronesian navigators, but no written records exist to confirm exactly when or how the system was born. One thing's for sure, it works, and that's what matters right now, because you're deep in the middle of nowhere, with no engine, no map, and no backup plan. But you've got stars, and somehow, that feels like more than enough. You remember your very first night sail. You were young, nervous. Every splash sounded like a sea monster. Every star looked the same. But your teacher leaned in and said, "Don't look at all the stars. Look at the ones that matter." Then he pointed at a bright one, Arcturus, and said, "That's your road tonight. Follow it like you follow your own breath." You did. And you made it home. Tonight you do the same. You track the rise of Capella, the subtle dip of Deneb, and the slow drift of the Milky Way across your shoulder. The sky isn't just moving, it's singing. And you're dancing with it, one constellation at a time. An occasional cloud drifts through, briefly blocking your view. No problem. You've already memorized the sequence of stars. If you can't see them, you feel where they should be. You're like someone who can sing a song even after the music stops. Sometimes, you wonder what it was like for the first wayfinder to trust the stars. To look up at that enormous sky. Pick a single light and say, "That way. Let's go." It takes guts, it takes faith, it takes quiet confidence. As the night deepens, the stars begin to shift position. You know dawn isn't far off. Soon, the star compass will give way to solar clues. But for now, you're still in star country. And you love it here. You lean back, gaze upward, and whisper thanks to the ancestors. They followed these same stars, in this same ocean, in canoes just like yours. And they made it. So will you. You don't need charts. You don't need luck. You've got stars. And that's enough. The first hint of sunrise touches the edge of the ocean, like a match striking softly in the dark. You blink and sit up straighter, maybe a bit stiff from the hours of crouching, and adjusting the sail. The stars are still faintly visible overhead, but the eastern horizon is beginning to glow, a thin line of orange and pink that spreads like watercolor bleeding through paper. This moment, just before dawn, is another crucial checkpoint in your navigational toolkit. It's not just pretty, it's powerful. Because now, you're adding a new layer to your perception, the play of sunlight, shadow, and time. As the light grows stronger, you scan the sky and see. You don't need a wristwatch. You don't even need to count the hours. The angle of light tells you everything. The sun's position, where it rises, how high it climbs, how long its shadow stretches, becomes a clock, a compass, and a confirmation that you're on course. You shift positions once more, standing in the canoe with careful balance. The wind stirs your hair, and the cool air carries the briny scent of open sea. You hold out your hand, palm flat, and measure the height of the sun above the horizon. Each finger's width equals roughly 15 minutes of time passed. Simple. Elegant. Weirdly effective. Mainstream historical fact. Polynesian navigators used this exact finger-width method to measure the sun's position and calculate time and direction. It's called hand, angle, measurement, and it's still taught in modern wayfinding schools like the Polynesian Voyaging Society. You glance down at the canoe's shadow on the water, long and thin right now, stretching across the surface like a paintbrush stroke. That shadow will shrink as the sun rises, and you'll use its angle to adjust your course. If it leans too far to the right, you're veering off. If it centers just behind your back, you're golden. Here's the quirky tidbit for today. Some traditional navigators would lick their finger and hold it up to the wind, then turn slowly until the dry side faced the breeze. That, combined with the sun's position, gave them a makeshift compass when the stars were gone but land was still days away. It's not exactly NASA tech, but it worked. You adjust the sail again, letting it catch the new morning breeze. The boat responds with a pleased creak, and the canoe surges forward with fresh energy. It's like it knows the sun is working with you now. You take a deep breath. The air is warmer. You can feel the moist heat creeping in with the light, a sign that the trade winds are steady and the day will be stable. Good news when you're still a speck in the middle of the Pacific. The sun continues its slow climb, and so does your mind. You're thinking of the many layers of time wrapped into this voyage. Not just hours and days, but seasons. You were taught to track the seasonal movements of the sun and stars, how certain constellations appear only in certain months, how the sun's rising point creeps north and south throughout the year, like a lazy pendulum. Historians still argue whether early Polynesians had a formal calendar system or a more fluid, observational approach. Some believe they used star risings to mark specific months and ceremonial times. Others think it was more intuitive, based on consistent environmental cues like bird migrations and flowering plants. Either way, their timing was spot on. You think back to when your journey began. You didn't just wake up one day and decide to sail. You waited for the right month, the right moon phase, the right wind. Your elders consulted signs like cloud patterns, ocean color, and even the behavior of crabs on the beach. If the crabs were digging deeper than usual, a storm was probably brewing. If they were sunning themselves lazily, smooth sailing ahead. You smile, remembering a story your cousin told you. One older navigator refused to sail unless a particular seabird circled the beach 3 times. Everyone thought it was superstition, until the one time he ignored it, and the canoe had to turn back due to unexpected currents. After that, no one questioned the bird again. The sun is now a full disk above the horizon, casting golden light across the rippling sea. You squint, not from the brightness, but from the clarity. You can see farther now. The sky is wide open, and so is your route. You check the clouds next. Not the fluffy ones up high, but the thin streaks closer to the horizon. They often form above distant islands, catching the warm air rising from land. If you see a line of thick, flat-bottomed clouds sitting low over the water, that's a clue. That might be your destination. Still invisible below the curve of the earth, but already announcing itself in the sky. Nothing yet, but you're patient. The sun tells you everything is moving as it should. You trust it. You sip some water from a gourd and let the salt dry on your lips. Your body is tired, but not worn down. Your mind is sharper than ever. You're in the flow now. The headspace where every little sign, every ripple, every ray of sunshine has meaning. You remember something your teacher told you. The sun rises for everyone, but it speaks only to those who listen. You're listening. You glance again at your canoe's shadow. It's shorter now, more compact. Noon is approaching. You'll rest during the hottest part of the day, maybe trade watches with another apprentice. But for now, you're still in charge, still reading the light like a sacred script. You hum a chant about the sun god, one you memorized long ago. It tells the story of how he was once caught and slowed down by a trickster hero, giving humans longer days. Whether myth or metaphor, it always makes you smile. Because out here, the sun really does feel like a god, powerful, steady, and terrifying if ignored. The wind shifts again, just slightly. You adjust the sail. The canoe leans a bit, and you ride the new angle with grace. You're not fighting the elements, you're collaborating with them. The sun climbs higher. You squint, measuring again with your fingers. Still on course. You're not lost. You're not hoping. You're navigating, with light, shadow, wind, and trust. And as always, with that quiet confidence. The sun is high now, beating down on your shoulders with that familiar tropical weight. Like someone placed a warm stone blanket over your back and dared you to keep paddling. The sails stretch tight, catching every ounce of the wind, and the canoe hums forward. It's midday, and the sea is calm, unbroken, and wide open, which means it's time to start watching the sky, not for stars or sun this time, but for wings and wisps. You shade your eyes and squint upward. There, they're coming. A pair of birds, maybe frigates or noddies, circling high above your mast. You smile. This is where the ocean starts whispering hints again. Not from below this time, but from above. Polynesian navigators didn't just read stars and waves, they read birds. You watch the pair for a moment, noting their flight pattern. They're not hunting, not diving, just gliding in a wide arc and heading in the same direction you are. That's a good sign. Birds are one of the oldest tools in the Wayfinder's kit. Certain species, especially terns and noddies, don't stray far from land. They fly out in the morning to fish and return to their nests in the evening. By watching their flight paths, especially at dawn and dusk, you can estimate where land might be, even if you can't see it yet. Mainstream historical fact. Polynesian sailors carefully observed the movement of seabirds and used their behavior to detect islands beyond the visual horizon. Some species have a maximum range of about 40 to 50 kilometers from shore. So if you see them flying in a straight line early in the morning, you can be pretty sure land lies in that direction. You lean back slightly and rest your paddle. The canoe keeps gliding. Up ahead, you notice a faint streak of clouds, flat-bottomed, sitting low. That's your second clue of the day. Clouds like these tend to form above land masses where warm air rises and condenses. It's not a guarantee, but paired with birds, it starts to feel like a breadcrumb trail. Your teacher once told you, birds are the gossipers of the sky. They always know where the party is. You laughed then. But now, watching the second pair of birds join the first, you nod. They know something you don't. Yet. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian navigators would actually bring birds with them, usually frigates or terns. They'd release one into the sky and watch which direction it flew. If it circled and returned, no land was nearby. But if it flew off in a straight line and didn't come back, time to follow it. It's like a feathery GPS with wings and a strong opinion. You look back across the sea. The swell is steady. The breeze is soft. The canoe's rhythm matches the beat of your thoughts. You're in sync. The birds are still overhead, gliding now in a lazy spiral. You're getting closer. Historians still argue whether the use of birds was a primary navigation method or just a backup system. Some say the bird trick was only used when nearing land already known. Others believe it was fundamental, a key part of the long-range voyaging toolkit. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But out here, it doesn't matter. If a bird can help you survive, you pay attention to the bird. You glance again at the clouds. Are they thicker now? A little darker around the edges. That could mean they're forming over a mountainous island, not just a low atoll. You adjust your heading slightly to lean into the signs. You think about how ridiculous this would seem to someone who's never sailed like this. You're telling me you're steering a canoe across an ocean based on birds and clouds. Yes, you are. And it works. You hum a soft chant, one that names birds like family. There's one for the Esmanuokai, the white tern. Another for the Noyo, the black noddy. Each bird has its own role in the navigator's mental map. Some fly higher, some skim the waves, some call out as they fly, and if you're quiet enough, you can hear them even before you see land. Suddenly, a shadow flickers across the canoe. You look up. A bird dives low, wings tucked, then pulls up sharply and glides into the distance. You watch its path. It's not looping. It's committing. Straight line, strong wing beats. That's what you've been waiting for. You stand, balancing with ease, and call out to the others on board. No words are needed, just a gesture. They know what it means. Time to shift course. Time to trust the feathered ones. You follow the bird's direction, eyes scanning the sky and sea. The clouds are thicker now, and the light has a different texture, a kind of golden haze that sometimes shows up when land is reflecting heat into the air. You're not sure, but your gut is leaning in. You remember a tale your grandfather shared, about a legendary navigator who sailed blindfolded for 3 days, guided only by the calls of seabirds and the changing scent of the wind. People say he landed exactly where he meant to. Others say he was just lucky. But either way, he made it. And in this world, that's what counts. You sniff the air. Still salty mostly. But is there a hint of something else? Earthy, damp, like wet leaves or moss? That's called telepa, a phenomenon where navigators claim to sense the presence of land. Not just visually but through smell, vibration, even flashes of light under the sea. Science hasn't fully explained it. But when enough people tell the same story over centuries, you start to believe. The wind shifts again, this time warmer. The birds are now dots on the horizon, flying ahead with purpose. You keep following. You're no longer just riding the ocean. You're tuning into it. Birds above, clouds ahead, a scent on the breeze. You can't see land, but you feel it, and that's more than enough. The sun begins to dip, casting long golden streaks across the ocean, like someone spilled honey over a blue silk sheet. The shadows stretch, and the colors of the sky deepen into a painter's palette of amber, lilac, and rose. As twilight approaches, you shift your thinking again. You've already read the stars, the swells, the sun, and the birds. Now, it's time to turn inward. Because the next part of this journey doesn't involve looking at charts or scanning the horizon. It's about remembering. Not just facts or directions, but entire islands. Whole voyages, patterns of wind and current and time. Because you don't carry maps carved in stone or painted on parchment. You carry a map inside your mind. A living, breathing thing built from generations of stories, symbols, and sound. You crouch in the canoe, hands trailing in the water. Not out loud, but in your head. A chant, a sequence, a roadmap disguised as poetry. This is your wayfinder's memory palace. Polynesian navigators use something called a mental map, often supported by stick charts, a kind of tactile, symbolic representation of islands, currents, and wave patterns made from thin strips of coconut fiber and shells. But these weren't carried on voyages. They were teaching tools. Once learned, the real chart lived in your head, mainstream historical fact. The Marshall Islanders created incredibly detailed stick charts, called the Rebelib and Meadow, which mapped out the relationships between islands and the patterns of swells and currents between them. These weren't literal maps but conceptual ones, designed to be memorized, not used at sea. The navigators would study them until they could see them in their minds while sailing. You close your eyes and picture one now. The strands of fiber crisscross at odd angles, each line representing a swell or a current. Shells are placed at intersections, symbolizing islands. To a stranger, it looks like a piece of abstract art. To you, it's a guidebook. But even more powerful than the chart is the chant. You begin to whisper part of it now, under your breath. It sounds like music, but every word is a breadcrumb. One phrase might indicate a shift in current. Another describes the color of the sea near a reef. Another tells you what the moon looks like when you're within a day's sail of home. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators would intentionally sail with their eyes closed for short stretches, forcing themselves to rely solely on feel, on rhythm, on memory, on intuition. It wasn't about blindness. It was about trust, about making sure your inner map was stronger than your eyes. You feel the swell shift beneath you. You lean into it automatically, not even thinking. Your mind is elsewhere, in that mnemonic chant, in the remembered sequence of islands and stars. You're not just sailing over the sea. You're sailing through a song. The others in the canoe are quiet now, each absorbed in their own tasks, some adjusting ropes, others watching the sky. But you're doing something different. You're navigating backward and forward at once, remembering past voyages to anticipate future ones. The chant in your head loops again, and you pause on one line. Where the wind falls like a sleeping child, the reef hides beneath green foam. That means you're near a lagoon soon. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow. Historians still argue whether these chants were standardized across regions or unique to each navigator. Some believe there was a shared core of knowledge, passed along oral highways from island to island. Others think each navigator built their own memory palace, tailored to their personal journeys and ancestral lines. Either way, the system was astonishingly accurate, and it's part of why Polynesians could navigate over 16 million square miles of ocean with nothing but their minds. You shift in the canoe, glancing at the horizon. The sun is now just a sliver, and the stars are beginning to blink awake. You smile, recognizing the familiar first spark of Venus, the evening star. Another marker, another confirmation that your chant is on track. Your teacher once told you, if you forget the chant, you forget the path. That stuck with you, because the chant isn't just direction, it's connection. To your ancestors, to the islands, to the ocean itself. Every navigator adds to it, refines it, passes it on. It's like a constantly updated song that no one ever writes down. You take a deep breath as the last light disappears. Night falls with a softness that surprises you every time. like a warm blanket pulled over your shoulders. You look up. The stars are out again, your old friends, but this time you're not looking for them to guide you. You already know the way. It's in your head. It's in your bones. It's in the chant. You're the map now. The stars are back, scattered in full brilliance across the sky, and the moon hangs low over the water like a silver smile. But tonight you're not relying on the heavens. You're going old school, even by Polynesian standards. No stars, no sun, no birds, just instinct and invisible math. Because tonight you're practicing the art of dead reckoning. The name sounds ominous, sure, like something you'd do in a pirate novel, after your compass breaks and your parrot dies. But it's actually one of the oldest and most essential methods in the Wayfinder's arsenal. Dead reckoning is how you estimate your position based on direction, speed, time, and distance traveled. Simple in theory, complex in practice. And out here, it's as important as breathing. You squint into the darkness, though you're not trying to see anything. It's more about feeling it. The canoe slices through the water at a steady rhythm, a rhythm you've memorized. You count your paddle strokes, not out loud, but in your head. Each stroke equals a set amount of distance. Multiply that by your estimated speed, and voila, you know how far you've traveled. Even if the sea around you offers no clue. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian navigators were expert dead reckoners. They could track their voyages for weeks without any visual references, relying only on their internal sense of distance, direction, and time. They calculated their canoe's speed by watching the wake, feeling the pressure on the steering paddle, and even noting how the wind moved across their skin. You feel it now, that subtle tension in the ropes, the tug of the sail, the pitch of the canoe as it leans into the wind. You estimate you're moving at about 6 knots. Not bad. You've been traveling like this for 4 hours. That puts you roughly 24 nautical miles from your last checkpoint. You make a mental note of that number, then adjust the tiller slightly to maintain your heading. It's like solving a moving math problem in the dark with no calculator, no pen, and no margin for error. Fun, right? Here's your quirky tidbit: some navigators used coconut shells floating beside the canoe as improvised speedometers. They'd toss the shell into the water, tie it to a drag line, and count how fast it moved past a fixed point. It wasn't exact, but it added a tactile check to their mental math. Think of it as the oceanic version of cruise control. With coconuts, you remember your training. You were maybe 13, still trying to figure out how to keep your lunch down on open water. Your uncle tied a rope to your ankle, blindfolded you, spun you in a circle, and said, "Tell me where we are." You panicked, floundered. Got it wrong. He just grinned and said, "Good. Now do it again." You hated it then, but you love it now, because now you can feel your position like a sixth sense. You know you've traveled northeast since sunset. You know the current's pushing slightly west, so you've compensated by adjusting your heading a few degrees. You know the wind is blowing at a steady 10 knots, and the swell's coming from the southeast. You stack all that data in your head like a living spreadsheet. Historians still argue whether Polynesian dead reckoning was more intuitive or mathematical. Some believe it was a kind of genius muscle memory, while others insist they must have had some formal system for calculating speed and drift. The truth? Probably both. Experience gives you instinct, but instinct is born from 1,000 tiny calculations you've made without even realizing it. You sip some water, eyes still scanning the horizon even though there's nothing to see. Your body is tired, but your mind is lit up. This is the part of navigation where it's just you and the numbers, just you and the sea. You mentally backtrack to your last known reference point, a star you passed under hours ago, a swell you recognized, a bird you followed until it disappeared into the dusk. Between that moment and now, you've been moving steadily, adjusting for current and wind. You estimate your current position within a few nautical miles. Not perfect, but good enough to find an island in the morning. The night deepens, and you feel the swell change slightly. It's more confused now, 2 directions intersecting. That means you're crossing into a new current zone. You adjust your heading again, recalculating. Every change in the ocean is a new variable in your mental equation. You glance over your shoulder, nothing but darkness. Ahead, more of the same. But you're not lost. You're reckoning. You're dead reckoning. You hum a chant to keep your rhythm. It's not just for comfort. It helps you measure time. Each verse takes roughly 2 minutes to sing. You've sung it 12 times since your last estimate. That gives you another data point. Another line on the invisible chart in your brain. You shift your weight, feeling the canoe's response. Still steady, still true. You think of the old stories, navigators who crossed 10 days of empty ocean and arrived within sight of islands no bigger than a dot. People say it was magic, or luck, or divine intervention. But you know the truth. It was reckoning. Just like this, you smile. Not because you're certain, but because you're close. You can feel it in the rhythm of the waves, in the way the air tastes. Even in the absence of any visual landmark, you can sense land approaching. Maybe not tonight, but soon. You whisper to the ocean, just in case she's listening. Don't trick me. She doesn't answer. But she doesn't need to. You're watching everything. Feeling everything. Counting everything. You are a human compass. A living GPS. A quiet mathematician in a canoe. And as long as you keep reckoning, you'll never truly be lost. The night has passed like a soft breath, and the first hints of dawn are curling at the edges of the horizon again. But this morning feels different. Not just because of the light, or the wind, or the careful rhythm of the canoe against the sea. It's because today, you're not just a wayfinder. You're an apprentice, and your teacher is watching. You shift slightly on the outrigger, trying not to let your nerves show. You've been on voyages before, sure. You've memorized chants, traced stick charts with your fingers, and counted stars until they felt like your own freckles. But today is different. Today is training, in the old way. That means no shortcuts, no soft encouragement, and absolutely no GPS. Just the sea, the sky, and the expectant silence of your teacher sitting behind you. He hasn't said a word since you left the last island. Not because he's angry. That's just the tradition. You lead. He observes. If you mess up, you won't hear about it in a calm little TED talk. You'll hear about it with a splash. Probably followed by a sarcastic comment and a very wet lesson. You grip the paddle tighter and glance at the sky. The stars have faded, but you caught them just before they disappeared. You know you're still on the right heading. The swell feels familiar. The wind smells the same. You whisper the chant under your breath, just to be sure of star rises, wave turns, bird sings, land breathes. Mindstream historical fact. Traditional Polynesian wayfinding apprentices underwent intense, multi-year training before they were allowed to navigate solo. They learned by doing, living on the canoes, memorizing environmental patterns, and being quizzed constantly. The title of Puv, a fully initiated navigator, was sacred and rare. It wasn't just about skill. It was about humility, responsibility, and trust. Your teacher shifts slightly, still no words, but you know he's watching your hands, your eyes, your posture. Every movement tells him if you're guessing or if you know. You take a deep breath and close your eyes, just for a moment. You feel the swell beneath you. It's coming from the southeast, just like it was last night. You adjust the tiller ever so slightly. Not because you're unsure, but because this is the part of the sea where the current likes to drift westward for a few hours after dawn. You remember that from the last trip. You file it away. And now comes the fun part. Your teacher reaches behind him and pulls out a cloth. Without a word, he wraps it around your eyes and ties it tight. You're blindfolded. You don't panic. This part is expected. It's the classic test. Navigating without vision, you can still feel the wind, still taste the salt, still sense the canoe's rhythm. But now, none of your guesses can come from your eyes. It's all feel, all memory, all instinct. You smile, just a little. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some wayfinding schools would force their apprentices to steer blindfolded for hours, even during storms. Not to be cruel, but to train them to see, with their skin. It's called NoHo, a kind of body listening. And it's very real. Some navigators claimed they could detect the shape of distant islands just by how the wind bounced off them and changed the temperature of the air. You sit in silence, feeling the canoe's subtle rhythm. The waves nudge from the same direction, but now they've changed shape slightly, shorter, faster. That means you're crossing a reef system. Maybe submerged, maybe not. Either way, you adjust course again. You don't need to know the exact coordinates. You just need to respond to the sea's message. Your teacher says one word, finally, where? You answer without hesitation, north, northeast. 30 degrees off the swell, still following the birds. He grunts. Not approval, not disapproval, just acknowledgement, which in this context is basically a standing ovation. Historians still argue whether this level of sensory navigation is actually possible or just a romantic exaggeration. Skeptics say no one can feel that much through a wooden canoe. Others say, come sail with us and you'll see, or rather, you'll feel. The blindfold stays on for another hour. 2. You lose track. But you don't lose direction. You keep adjusting, keep counting, keep humming the chant in your head. Every minute becomes a lesson. Every shift in the wind a quiz. Finally, your teacher untees the cloth. You blink against the morning light, and there it is, land. Faint, distant, still wrapped in mist, but unmistakable. A sharp ridge, a line of trees, the curve of a beach you've never seen before, but somehow knew was there. You exhale. Not relief, not pride, just confirmation. You were right. Your teacher remains quiet, but the tiniest smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. That's the gold medal right there. You don't need a ceremony. That look says everything. You guide the canoe forward, toward the island. The smell of greenery is faint but growing. The waves shift again, softening as they pass over shallow coral. You adjust for that too. You think about all the other apprentices who've done this. Some who failed, some who wept, some who disappeared. You think about the responsibility of holding ancient knowledge in your head. Not to boast, but to serve. To carry your people forward. To remember the way. You're not a master yet, not even close. But today, you proved you belong in the canoe. That's the first step. The hardest one. You glance back at your teacher. He nods once, then points toward the shore. Take us home. You smile. Because now you can. The sun has dipped again, painting the sea in molten gold. But tonight, unlike the others, there's no moon, no birds, no clouds. Just darkness and silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring if you listen too hard. The stars are out, but hidden behind a thick curtain of clouds. The swell is confused, bouncing from multiple angles. This is the kind of night that separates the hopeful from the prepared. You are sailing blind. Not blindfolded this time, just blind in the natural sense. No sky compass, no solar shadows, no friendly birds overhead to point the way. Just you, the canoe, and a whole lot of guesswork laced with memory. Welcome to the night crossing. You sit still, barely moving, because any sudden shift could throw off your balance, not just of your body, but of your internal alignment with the ocean. Your paddle rests across your lap. You're not steering yet. First, you need to listen. Polynesian navigators knew that there would be nights like this. Nights when the sky offered no help and the sea seemed to shrug its shoulders. They didn't panic. They didn't wait for sunrise. They leaned harder into their other senses. You lie back slowly, pressing your spine against the wooden hull, eyes open, hands out, ears tuned. The canoe speaks in creaks and whispers. The water slaps and slides along the sides in rhythmic pulses. There it is, the dominant swell, still coming from the southeast, though weaker now. You feel it not in your feet but in your ribs. A slow rolling thrum beneath the noise. Mainstream historical fact. Navigators in the Pacific could detect multiple swell patterns simultaneously, often identifying where 2 or 3 intersected. Even without visual cues, they could stay oriented by how the canoe rocked beneath them. It wasn't guesswork, it was practiced, embodied knowledge. You close your eyes. The darkness inside your lids is no different from the world around you. You begin to breathe in rhythm with the canoe. Inhale, shift, exhale, adjust. It's like meditation, except you're not trying to clear your mind. You're trying to fill it. With every wobble, every push of the water, every gust of wind against your cheek, you reach for your mental compass again. You remember where you were before the clouds swept in. You estimate how fast you were moving. You factor in the slight westward drift you felt over the last few hours. You know the current here, how it dances in lazy spirals before dragging you south if you're not careful. You adjust the tiller accordingly, trusting your inner map. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators claim they could hear the direction of waves in their eardrums, like an oceanic sonar. Others would lie in the canoe and let the vibration of the hull guide them, almost like tuning into a frequency. Whether science or sorcery, it worked. You steer by feel now. No looking, just leaning. You hum a low chant, not to pass the time, but to mark it. Each verse is a timekeeper, each repetition a gentle reminder of how far you've gone. You're not measuring seconds. You're measuring moments. The feeling of the wind shifting, the swell changing tone, the taste of the air turning slightly briny. All of it is data. All of it matters. Historians still argue whether the ability to navigate in total darkness was widespread or reserved for only the most elite navigators. Some say it was common. Others think only a few possessed the sensitivity to manage it. But one thing is clear, those who could do it were revered like wizards. You're starting to understand why. Hours pass. Maybe 3. Maybe 4. Time is elastic out here. You haven't seen a single star. But you haven't lost your direction. You can still feel the swell from your left side, just where it should be. The wind is still cool and steady from the east. You're still on course. You think about the stories. Navigators who found islands by intuition alone, who sailed into blackness and emerged at sunrise with land dead ahead. People say it's luck, but luck doesn't count strokes. Luck doesn't memorize chance or study currents for years. You shift your grip on the paddle. The water feels different now, warmer, maybe. Or is it your imagination? You sniff the air, still salty but heavier, like it's carrying something other than sea. Could it be land? Could it be people? You don't get excited. That's dangerous. You just file it away. Another clue. You glance up, and then, finally, the clouds begin to break. Just a sliver. Just enough. A single star pierces the darkness. You lock onto it immediately. Haklika, the star of gladness, your northeastern marker. You smile. Not because you need it, but because it's a gift. Confirmation that all your reckoning, all your intuition, all your feel, it in your bones guesswork was right. You were never lost. Just in the dark. And the dark doesn't scare you anymore. Now with the star in sight, you make a tiny course correction. Not much, you were already close. Your teacher would be proud, not that he'd admit it. You lean back again, letting the canoe rock you gently. The swell is steady. The wind is soft, the star winks above you like an old friend. You're not just navigating anymore, you're communing. With the sea, with your ancestors, with the night itself. And maybe, just maybe, the night is starting to trust you back. The sky is clear by dawn, and the sea is calm, as if last night's darkness never happened. But you remember it, the silence, the blind sailing, the single star that appeared like a wink from the ancestors. And now, as golden light spills over the curve of the ocean, you're reminded of something deeper. This voyage was never just about reaching a destination. It's about trust, not just in the sea, or the stars, or your training, but in the sacredness of the journey itself. Because long before GPS, before sextants, before even compasses, Polynesian navigators believed they were never truly alone on the ocean. They were guided by more than swells and stars. They were guided by the gods, and by the spirits of their ancestors who, according to legend, rode the Milky Way like a great celestial canoe. You feel that now. The wind picks up, and it has a voice. Not a whisper, not a howl, something in between. It sounds like a memory. You close your eyes, letting it wash over you, and you feel the weight of generations pressing gently against your shoulders. Mainstream historical fact. Navigation in ancient Polynesia wasn't just a technical skill, it was a spiritual one. Voyaging was wrapped in ritual, prayer, and offerings. Before a long trip, navigators would fast, chant, and consult priests. Certain voyages were only undertaken during specific moon phases. Canoes were blessed. The sea was addressed as a living being. And this morning, you feel that deeper layer humming just beneath the surface of your rational mind. You glance at the horizon. The clouds are low and still. The sea is a mirror. But something else is at play. You reach into your pouch and pull out a small stone, smooth, volcanic, dark as night. Your grandmother gave it to you. Said it came from a sacred place. Maybe it's superstition. Maybe it's just a rock. But out here, you don't take chances. You hold it in your palm, whisper a chant, and place it at the bow of the canoe. You're not asking for miracles, just guidance. Your teacher, seated behind you, says nothing. But you can feel his approval in the silence. He knows what you're doing. He's done it too. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian navigators believed that their ancestors could appear in the form of sea creatures during voyages. Like dolphins, turtles, or even sharks. These weren't just animals. They were dom qua, family spirits. If one appeared near your canoe, it wasn't just a good omen, it was personal. You scan the water now, half hoping for a fin, a ripple, a flash beneath the surface. Nothing yet. But you're watching. The sea changes color slightly, less sapphire, more turquoise. That means you're getting closer to land. The swell flattens, the rhythm softens. The canoe seems to glide more easily now, as if drawn forward by something unseen. You remember a story your uncle told you, about a navigator who got caught in a storm and lost his entire crew. For 3 days, he floated alone, no stars, no food, no hope. And then, one night, he said a voice spoke to him from the waves. Not in words, but in feeling. It told him to follow the warm current. He did. and he found land. People say he was hallucinating, but out here, you learn not to dismiss those things. Historians still argue whether the spiritual side of navigation was practical or mystical. Were the chants just mnemonic devices? Were the rituals just ways to focus the mind? Maybe. Or maybe they were something more, a kind of tuning, a way to align the navigator with the forces beyond human understanding. You take another deep breath. The air has changed again. You can smell it now. Green things, earth, wet leaves, life. The island is near. You scan the water, and there are flicker, a ripple moving differently from the swell, a shimmer beneath the surface. You lean closer. Dolphins. A pod of them cutting through the water alongside your canoe. Sleek, silver, joyful. You smile. You can't help it. They leap and twist, as if showing off, or maybe guiding you. Either way, you take it as a sign. You whisper a thank you, not to them, exactly, but to whoever or whatever sent them. You're not alone. You've never been alone. The dolphins stay with you for a while, then vanish as quickly as they came. Just a flash, a splash, and gone. You glance at your teacher. He nods once and murmurs, "Good sign." That's all you need. You adjust the tiller again, just slightly, and the canoe responds like it's alive. The wind fills the sail. The ropes tighten. The speed picks up. You don't speak. You don't need to. The island is close now. You can see the faint outline of trees, the shape of a ridge. But more than that, you can feel it. The canoe is pulling toward it. The ocean is easing into a welcome. The air is thick with arrival. You close your eyes for a moment and whisper the final lines of your chant. The gods see. The ancestors guide. The way is known. You open your eyes. Land. You didn't just find it with skill. You found it with reverence, with trust, with quiet confidence. You step onto the shore with bare feet and wobbly legs. The sand warm and surprisingly soft after days of sea and salt and swell. Your canoe rests behind you, tethered in the shallows, creaking gently like it's sighing in relief. But you're not done. This island may be new to your eyes, but it already feels familiar, because you've been here before. Not physically, but in stories, in chants, in memory. You walk inland, the trees thick with green, and the air sweet with blossoms you don't recognize. And then you hear it. Voices. Laughter. A language that feels like a cousin of your own. People. You've made it. But tonight's journey doesn't end with making landfall. Tonight, it continues with what you carry off the canoe. Because the greatest treasures Polynesian navigators brought with them weren't gold or spices. They were tales. Myths. Oral maps wrapped in poetry. Songs that encoded survival, celebration, and knowledge. And now, you're about to trade stories. You sit with the islanders under a thatched roof, eating something roasted and wrapped in leaves. The fire crackles. Someone begins to chant, and others join in, low and slow, a melody that sways like a canoe on calm water. You listen closely. The chant tells of a great canoe that traveled from the rising sun, of a navigator who followed a shark to a hidden lagoon, of stars that danced across the sky in a trail of flame. The details are different, but the shape of the story is the same. Mainstream historical fact. Polynesian oral traditions served as both history and navigation guides. Chants and myths weren't just entertainment. They were memory tools. A single tale could encode everything from wind patterns to island layouts to the timing of monsoon seasons. And because there was no written language, these stories were memorized and passed down with astonishing accuracy for generations. You lean forward, fascinated. One elder notices and grins. She starts to quiz you, gently, like a grandmother testing a grandchild who's just come home. What's the name of the star that rises before the breadfruit ripens? You answer. Acre. She nods. What does the wind say when the sea turns green? You answer. It says go left. She laughs. Not bad. Soon, it's your turn to share. You begin your own chant, the one you've practiced 100 times, but never performed outside your home island. You tell of your voyage, the birds, the blind sailing, the star that saved you. You describe the island you left and the one you sought. You weave in metaphors because that's how this works. No one says, we sailed northeast for 3 days. Instead, you say, the turtle chased dawn across the salt sky, and everyone nods, because they understand. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian navigators included deliberate exaggerations in their chants, not as lies, but as memory anchors. If a story said an island rose from the sea like a whale's back, it helped the listener remember that the island had a steep slope. If a chant described a storm as angry enough to eat the moon, It was a clue to avoid sailing during that lunar phase. You finish your story, and the group claps, not loudly, but with quiet reverence. The kind of applause that says, "We've been there too." Later, someone brings out a long, curved object, an old paddle, carved with symbols. It's not for steering, it's for remembering. Each notch represents a voyage, each swirl, a storm survived or an island discovered. They offer it to you, not to keep, but to hold, a gesture of trust. You run your fingers over the carvings. They feel familiar, even though you've never seen them before. They feel like home. Historians still argue how much information these oral traditions could really preserve. Some suggest they were too poetic to be practical. Others point to the stunning precision of Polynesian settlement patterns across thousands of islands as proof that the chants worked better than any paper map ever could. You don't argue. You know. You just crossed an ocean with nothing but what lived in your head and your bones. And now you're adding to the legacy. The night deepens, and the fire turns to embers. The islanders sing softly, not for performance, not for guests, but just because that's what they do. A lullaby for the sea, a thank you to the stars. You lie back in the grass, eyes scanning the sky. It's clear again. Every familiar constellation is back in its place. You see Orion's belt, the Southern Cross, and a faint line of stars that arcs across the heavens like a bridge. The Milky Way. Your grandmother told you it was the path the ancestors used to sail between worlds. That when you die, if you lived well and remembered the chants, you'd sail that path too. It's a beautiful thought. And out here, it feels true. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to remember. Every part of the journey, every chant, every star, every word of the stories you've heard tonight. Because in the end, you don't just sail to carry your body across the ocean. You sail to carry knowledge, to carry memory, to carry legacy, and now it's your turn to pass it on. You wake early, before the birds, before the village, before the sun has even decided what it's doing. The air is cool and still, and the island feels like it's holding its breath. You sit up slowly, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and look toward the sea. The same sea you crossed to get here. And now your thoughts turn to something more distant, more mysterious. A place even the elders speak of with a touch of awe and confusion: Rapa Nui, Easter Island. You've never been there. Few have. It's the farthest outpost in the Polynesian world. So far removed that it feels more like myth than memory. And yet, someone found it. Someone navigated there first. And historians still can't quite agree how. You sit by the fire pit, rekindling the coals, and think about what that must have been like. To set sail across thousands of miles of open ocean, past every other known island, and find that. A tiny speck of volcanic rock, barely 60 square miles in size, sitting alone in a vast, empty corner of the Pacific. Mainstream historical fact: Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island, was settled by Polynesians sometime between 800 and 1200 CE, though the exact date is still hotly debated. It's over 2,000 miles from the nearest inhabited island, yet its language, DNA, and cultural markers tie it unmistakably to the Polynesian Triangle. So how did they get there? You ask one of the elders. She smiles and shrugs. Classic navigator move. Some say they were blown off course, she says. Others say they were exiled. But I think they were just bold. She tells you the story of Hotu Matuga, the first king of Rapa Nui. According to legend, he had a dream, a vision of a faraway land where his people could thrive. He built a massive canoe, loaded it with families, seeds, tools, and hope, and sailed into the unknown. And he found it. Whether that's literal history or poetic truth doesn't matter. What matters is the belief behind it, that the ocean isn't a wall, it's a path, and that sometimes the path leads to places no one else would dare go. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some islanders believe that Rapa Nui was found by mistake, by navigators chasing the flight path of a migrating bird that flew farther than expected. According to this version, the canoe followed a lone frigate bird for days, expecting to find land. They nearly turned back, but then, on the 7th day, they saw cliffs rising from the sea. The bird had led them to the edge of the world. You stare out at the horizon, imagining that moment. The disbelief, the joy, the terror, the sheer audacity. Historians still argue whether Rapa Nui was discovered intentionally or accidentally. Some point to the island's extreme remoteness and suggest it must have been a fluke. Others argue that Polynesian navigation was so advanced that reaching Rapa Nui was just another stop in a long chain of deliberate exploration. The debate continues, fueled by both archaeological evidence and oral tradition. But standing here, with the sea breeze on your face and the memory of your own voyage still fresh, you lean toward the intentional theory. Because if you made it this far without instruments, guided only by sky and swell and story, why wouldn't someone else have gone farther? You think about those massive stone heads, moai, that stare inland across Rapa Nui, each one carved from volcanic rock, each one placed with solemn precision. No one really knows what they mean. Ancestors, gods, guardians, but some navigators believe they were markers, not just of territory but of achievement, a way of saying, we came, we saw, we remembered, and maybe, just maybe, they were placed in alignment with celestial bodies, like the star compasses you learned to use. Maybe they were a sky map carved into the earth. You walk down to the shore and kneel at the water's edge. The tide washes over your knees. The ocean is calm. You could launch a canoe right now and head east. It would take weeks, maybe months. But if you followed the signs, if you read the swells, counted your strokes, trusted your chance, you might just find it. Or maybe it would find you. That's the strange beauty of navigation out here. It's never just about getting from point A to point B. It's about being open to discovery, about following a hunch, a bird, a dream, about understanding that sometimes the thing you're trying to find is also trying to find you. You stand up, brushing the sand from your legs. The elder joins you, placing a hand on your shoulder. If you ever go, she says, take a story with you and bring one back. Simple advice. But it hits deep, because that's what Rapa Nui represents. Not just the farthest reach of the Polynesian triangle, but the outer edge of human curiosity. The quiet confidence that says, let's see what's out there. You look to the east. The sky is lighter now. The wind is shifting. Maybe one day you'll go. Maybe you'll follow the path of Hotu Matuka. Maybe you'll find your own cliffside to carve. But for now, it's enough to know that someone once dared to sail that far, that they arrived, that they remembered, and that they left behind a mystery that still hums with possibility. You whisper to the wind, just in case. Await for me, later that same day. You find yourself sitting beneath a breadfruit tree, chewing slowly on something roasted and unfamiliar, while a group of locals chat nearby about pottery. Not usually the juiciest topic, you'd think. But in Polynesia, pottery isn't just about bowls and plates, it's about ancestors. And tonight, the conversation turns to something called the lapita. You perk up, you've heard the name before, whispered in chants, scribbled on maps, embedded in the stories of where we came from, but now you're hearing it in a new way. Because it turns out, the lapita weren't just early settlers. They were the blueprint for everything that came after. Mainstream historical fact. The Lapita people were the ancestors of the Polynesians. Originating from Taiwan and migrating through the Philippines and Melanesia, they began spreading eastward into the Pacific around 500 years ago. Their distinctive pottery, decorated with intricate dentate, stamped patterns, is found across thousands of miles, from the Bismarck Archipelago all the way to Tonga and Samoa. And yet, no Lapita pottery has ever been found in places like Hawaii, Rapa Nui, or Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is weird, because those are the heart of Polynesia. You glance up from your roasted breadfruit and ask the elder across from you, so what happened to the pottery? He grins. We got tired of carrying it. He might be kidding, but he might not. One theory is that by the time the Lapita descendants reached the farthest corners of Polynesia, they'd simply adapted away from pottery. After all, it's fragile, not exactly ideal for loading onto a canoe and bouncing across thousands of miles of ocean. Instead, they relied on gourds, woven baskets, and cooking in earth ovens, lighter, more practical, more ocean-proof. Still, the Lapita Trail is one of the biggest breadcrumbs in Pacific archaeology. The pottery shards tell a story of deliberate movement, of voyaging eastward, island by island, over centuries. It wasn't a rush, it was a rhythm, a pulse. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some of the Lapita pottery designs are so consistent across vast distances that archaeologists believe they may represent shared symbols, or even a proto-writing system. One shard found in Vanuatu has patterns eerily similar to those found thousands of miles away in Fiji. It's like ancient Instagram, but with clay. You ask the elder, do you think they knew how far they'd go? He shrugs. Maybe not at first. But after a few hundred islands, you stop being surprised. You laugh, but something about that sticks with you. Because the real question is not just how they went so far, it's how fast. Historians still argue over the timeline. Some say the Lapita expanded slowly, taking generations to move from one island to the next, waiting until populations stabilized before moving on. Others point to the rapid colonization of the Central and Eastern Pacific. Once into Polynesia proper, the movement seems to have accelerated. Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and Aotearoa were all likely settled within a few hundred years of each other, across staggering distances. That's not slow, that's sprinting over oceans. So what changed? Some believe it was climate. Maybe a shift in wind patterns opened up more favorable conditions. Others suggest that navigational knowledge had reached a tipping point. Enough accumulated wisdom to make longer, riskier voyages possible. And then there are those who whisper about something else, the pull of mana. Spiritual energy. The belief that certain people are born to go. That some are called. You finish your meal and lean back against the tree, letting the breeze wash over you. You picture those early Lapita canoes, massive double-hulled vessels, loaded with families, animals, plants and dreams. No metal, no compasses, just stars, waves, and the courage to follow both. You imagine the pottery tumbling in the hold, clinking softly with each swell, until one day it was left behind altogether. Too heavy, too breakable, not worth the trouble. And yet the journey continued. You walked down to the shoreline later, running your fingers through the sand. Somewhere beneath your feet, maybe a few feet down, maybe a few centuries back, there might be a shard, a fragment, a whisper from the Lapita. They didn't leave behind books. They left behind patterns, clay marked with care. Designs passed from hand to hand, mind to mind, across oceans. You think about your own voyage, about how you'll remember it, about what you might leave behind. Not a pot, probably, but maybe a chant, a story, a new verse to an old song. You pick up a shell and hold it to your ear. It doesn't whisper much, just the sea, doing what it's always done. Moving, calling, carrying. You whisper into the shell, just for fun. Where next? It doesn't answer, but you already know. The Lapita didn't stop, and neither will you. You're back on the water again, not because you have to be, but because something inside you can't stay away. The island has been kind, the people warm, the stories rich. But the sea still calls, and now you're not alone in hearing it. You're part of something bigger now. A movement, a revival, a return. The canoe you're on is new, sort of. It's built in the old way, yes, with twin hulls and no engine. But the wood is modern, the lashings reinforced with a few clever updates. Still, it feels ancient, sacred, alive. And painted on the side in bold letters is a name you've heard whispered like a spell, Aklika. Mainstream historical fact. In 1976, the Aklika, an authentically constructed Polynesian double-hulled canoe, set out from Hawaii to Tahiti, using only traditional navigation. No compass, no maps, no GPS. Just the stars, the sea, and a Micronesian master navigator named Maupiailug. The voyage proved what many had doubted for centuries. That ancient Polynesians really had the skill to intentionally navigate across thousands of miles of open ocean. You run your hand along the rail. This canoe, and others like it, aren't just boats, they're proof. Floating, wind-powered rebukes to centuries of Western skepticism. For decades, scholars insisted the Pacific was settled by accident, that people just drifted with the currents and stumbled upon islands like shipwrecked castaways. But now, with voyages like Akalika's, that story is changing, and you're part of it. The sun is high as the crew prepares for launch. You're not the apprentice anymore. You're a navigator, in training on a modern traditional voyage, retracing ancestral routes that connect Hawaii, Tahiti, Aotearoa, Rapa Nui, and beyond. Not to discover new lands, but to rediscover old knowledge. You adjust the sail. The wind catches. The canoe groans with joy, and just like that you're moving. Here's your quirky tidbit. During Hakalika's first voyage, the crew celebrated landfall in Tahiti with more than 17,000 people waiting on the beach. That's how powerful the reconnection was. A whole island nation turning out to greet a canoe that carried not just sailors, but pride, memory, and the quiet defiance of cultural survival. You glance across the deck and see a younger crew member staring wide-eyed at the sky. He's where you were once, eager, nervous, hoping not to mess up. You nudge him gently and point to the horizon. Watch the swell, you say. Feel it in your hips. He nods. The learning begins. Historians still argue about how much of traditional navigation was preserved before the revival. Some say the knowledge was nearly extinct. Others say it was just sleeping, waiting to be awakened. Maupiailug was one of the last masters before the rebirth, and his decision to teach outsiders, to pass on his sacred knowledge, is now seen as one of the great cultural gifts of the 20th century. You think about Mao a lot, about what it must have been like to carry so much knowledge alone, while the world dismissed it, about the courage it took to share it, not just with his own people, but with anyone willing to learn with respect and humility. You adjust the tiller, feeling the canoe respond. It's not just a vessel. It's a floating classroom, a temple, a protest, and a promise. On board, the crew chants together, softly, rhythmically. The words are old, but the voices are young. That's the magic. This isn't a museum piece. It's a very living tradition. You pass another canoe heading in the opposite direction, part of a growing fleet of traditional voyaging vessels spreading across the Pacific. You wave. They wave back. No competition here. Just kinship, shared salt, shared sky. Later, as the sun sets, you sit at the bow and look out at the stars. You know them now like old friends. You greet each one as it rises, placing it in your mental compass. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel the pull of the next island. You think about the kids watching this canoe from the shore, about the elders wiping tears from their eyes as they remember their own grandparents singing those same chants, about the teachers and students and skeptics and believers who see you out here and realize this wasn't lost, it was waiting. And you think about all the canoes that never made it, the ones that were burned, the ones that were banned, the ones whose names we'll never know because colonization tried to erase them. But here you are, sailing, thriving, returning. You whisper to the wind, "We're still here." The wind whispers back, "I never doubted you." You lean back, letting the stars take over. You're not afraid of the night anymore. You're not afraid of the sea. You've learned to trust the journey, to trust your senses, and most importantly, to trust the lineage, the unbroken chain of wayfinders who crossed these oceans with nothing but observation, memory, and faith. The revival isn't just about remembering what once was. It's about proving it still lives inside you. The wind is gentle tonight, brushing your cheek like a mother's hand. The sails of your canoe are full, but not straining. The sea is dark and smooth, with only the faintest silver shimmer where the moon touches it. You sit near the stern, the tiller in your hand, not needing to move much. Your body is in rhythm now. Your mind is clear. You've come a long way, not just in distance, but in understanding, in confidence, in connection. It's quiet on deck. Some of the crew are sleeping. Others are murmuring together, pointing at constellations, testing each other's navigation memory. The younger ones are learning the chants you once struggled to remember. And now, you're the one gently correcting their rhythm, just like your teacher did for you. The stars above are brilliant, as if they've been waiting for this night to show off. You track them automatically, but you're not worried about direction. You know where you are. More importantly, you know who you are. That's the quiet confidence of the wayfinder, not arrogance, not ego, just that deep, anchored certainty that says, I can do this, I can read the ocean, I can trust the stars, I can carry others across the unknown. A mainstream historical fact. The Polynesian Triangle, Hawaii in the north, Aotearoa in the southwest, and Rapa Nui in the southeast, is the largest navigated area in human pre-modern history. Over 10 million square miles of ocean, thousands of islands, no maps, no metal, no written language, just memory, story, skill. And people still dare to say they drifted. You smile, because you know better now. You know what it takes to sail into nothing but horizon. Night after night, trusting the angle of a star, the shape of a cloud, the way the swell touches your hull. You know what it feels like to wake in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight, and still know exactly where you are. You've felt the fear, the doubt, the dizzying scale of the Pacific, and you've kept going. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators believe that when they sailed far enough from home, they didn't just cross into new waters, they crossed into new realms. That the ocean wasn't just geography, it was spiritual terrain, a place where time bent, where ancestors whispered, where knowledge waited in the waves. You believe that now, too, because some nights, like this one, you can feel them with you. The ones who came before, sitting in the canoe like shadows, whispering tips, laughing when you make a mistake and correcting you in dreams. They're not gone, they're just on the wind. Historians still argue about how these navigators carried so much information in their heads. Some say it's impossible, that no human could memorize that much. But you've done it, and you're still learning, because being a wayfinder isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to learn everything, again and again, island by island, sky by sky. You look out over the bow. The stars ahead mark the direction of tomorrow's landfall. But you're not rushing. You're not gripping the tiller in desperation. You're gliding. You're part of something ancient, something alive. You're not just sailing. You're continuing a conversation that began thousands of years ago, between humans and the sea, between sky and soul. And now you get to carry that forward. You lean back, breathe deep, and close your eyes. The ocean rocks the canoe gently, and you let yourself drift, not in direction, but in thought. You remember your first night on the water, the fear, the excitement, the confusion. You remember the first chant you memorized, the first star you trusted, the first time you felt the canoe respond to your touch like a living thing. You remember the stories, the myths, the laughter around fires on faraway beaches, and you remember what your teacher told you when you tried to thank him. You don't owe me anything. Just teach someone else, and you will. Because that's what wayfinders do. They pass it on, quietly, confidently, one star at a time. You open your eyes. The sky is still there. The sea is still singing. And you are exactly where you're meant to be.